Well, I do want to ask this one that I'm pulling up. Helena had posted this a while back.
Okay.
She says, I really like and this is in quotes, what do you notice now that's different than before? And I know you sometimes say that. Well, she says towards at the end of a session, but I think you say that whenever it feels appropriate. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. Yes. Yes and no.
Okay. Well, let me finish the rest of her sentence or question, and then you can say anything you like. If it's a returning client and I ask things like that, what have you noticed that's different since last session, which is another version of that, in the beginning? And then so she's just saying, well, I would love to know any more good questions or statements to bring at the beginning or the end, any good setups to use for the sessions along those lines.
Right. So this is interesting that this question would come along at the moment, because I've just started doing something different with this after doing largely the same thing for quite a long time. And it's only a small difference, but it is a difference nonetheless. And I quite like the difference. So I'll just say, I think that's it's a really good habit to be checking in with somebody as to what's different in, say, the second session. So I often think about this as feedback loops. I want to keep the feedback loops going. Sometimes they're short, they're in the session, but we want to keep these kind of longer attentional feedback loops going. So continually orienting people to difference is extremely useful. So one way of doing that is, what have you had the opportunity to notice since last time? So this is my classic one that I will ask, but I've sort of changed this a little bit into something a little softer and a bit more organic. I'm not saying I have a rule that says I don't ask the old version, now I ask the new version, but I tend to sort of just start a session at the moment and say, so what's been unfolding for you? Right. So I use this metaphor of unfolding because I like it. It's very resonant for me. So what's been unfolding for you? Unfolding implies very indirectly, very subtly, that there's been some change. It implies something is kind of opening out. There's something called, I think I learned this as presupposition threshold, but it's sort of implication threshold. And what it is if you ask something like, so if we understand the structure of presuppositions, if you ask somebody a question like, so how much have you been changing since we last spoke? From a linguistic perspective, that is setting up a presupposition. What is presupposed is that you have been changing. And typically, the more you sort of stack those in, you can say, I wonder how much you've had the opportunity to notice what's been changing. That sort of buries the presupposition a little bit deeper. And the more deeply buried it is, the sort of, the more the critical faculty can't quite find it to get hold of. Right. But some presuppositions or implications are stronger than others. And if they're really strong, they can sort of still get caught by the critical faculty or by the conscious mind, right? They don't go under the radar anymore. So, I sometimes feel, even though I've always asked it, with some clients occasionally when I say, so what is it that's changed for you since we last spoke? Is I feel for some clients it's a little bit too pushy, it's a little bit too flagged. Right. Now, I think it's softer if you say, so what's been changing for you since we last spoke? I think changing softens it a bit. But then putting that metaphor in place, so what's been unfolding for you since we last spoke, really buries the sort of the presupposition or the implication, because it's a metaphor as well. It's not just an explicit concept of changing, it's the metaphor of unfolding. Right. Now, I will also ask this in a particular way, which is with a sense of curiosity, wonderment, wanting to know. I think this is a really powerful way to always be asking these questions, is from a place of genuine curiosity. So connect to the energy of curiosity when you ask these things. Yeah, so what's been unfolding since we last spoke, or what's been unfolding since last week or whatever? That's a good one. At the beginning of the session. But what I've been doing differently at the end of the sessions is asking the question, so what is it that you're connecting with now that's different from before? Right. Now, I'm going to give a backwards rationalization for this. The real truth is I just started doing this. And one of the reasons I think that I just started doing it is because I've started to see more and more what you might call trance work or interactive trance work as not being about any kind of special state. It's not really about a special state. Of course, people's state is altering. But I think it's more useful to think about what it is that you're connecting people with. What is it that you're connecting together? So it's much more for me, I'm into this kind of zone of connection at the moment. And I think this has spontaneously come out. What is it that you're connecting with now that's different from before? Now, to give an extra layer as to why I think this is quite good, is I started out years ago using the question, what do you know now that's different from before? And that's taken straight from David Grove's clean space stuff, this kind of thing. Now, know in this sense is not really about intellectual knowing. It's about body knowing. And if you've been playing the frame a lot in the session, you know, what does your head know? What does your heart know? Or what does that hand know? Or what does this sense or sensation know? If you've been playing the frame, it's easy to use know and it not be mistaken for an intellectual sort of thing. But if you've been doing a certain sort of work that is a lot less interactive, maybe a bit more Ericksonian, then you pop out with what do you know now that's different from before? Sometimes it kind of pulls people back into a cognitive space. So there's a sort of risk involved. So what I used to do is if I've been doing one sort of work and seeding that idea of an embodied knowing, I'd say, what do you know now that's different from before? But if I've been doing something more Ericksonian, I might say, and what is it that you're noticing now within yourself, within your being that's different from before right now? So I change it to what is it you're noticing instead of what is it that you know. But I kind of think this connecting with, because again, it's back into the realm of metaphor rather than explicit concept. So you can connect in a variety of different ways. It can mean so many different things. So I think it covers a lot more bases with one word. So I've been using that. What is it that you're connecting with now? And interesting things come out. You know, I have a sense that X, or I realize now that X, or I just have this great feeling of whatever. Anything can come out of that at the end of the session. So yeah, a little bit of difference just recently and around what I've been doing with that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's as you said, each different version. I was just sitting there as the client and feeling how different that felt. Just you changing the word, changing the feeling. So it's super interesting.
I would say, by the way, just to add something to that, Ruckus.
Sure.
That habit of doing that you've just done is like, how does that show up differently in my being when I think connected versus no, right? That comparing and contrasting through your sort of interoceptive system or felt sense system, that's an extraordinarily good habit, I think, to get into. And I would encourage that to anybody that's learning, you know, facilitatory work or hypnotic language.
Yeah, that I loved your switch out of the word unfolding because it has such a active connotation to it, but and it could be a positive or negative thing that's unfolding in my life either way, but it's still
right. Yeah, it's still, that's absolutely it. It's not valencing it too strongly, so it's reasonably clean in that sense. But it is acknowledging that it's a dynamic thing. There is dynamism in there. There's not a static.
Yeah, that's the word, dynamic. The word unfolding is, that's great. I love that.